Hello and good morning. It's 6 o'clock and this is News on Sky News. Thanks for starting the day with us. This is how things are looking. Mission complete. The crew of Artemis 2 splashed down in the Pacific Ocean after an historic trip around the moon. NASA call it a perfect bullseye as the astronauts emerged from the capsule and say there are many more new missions to come. Also today, the Iranian delegation arrived in Islamabad for ceasefire talks today that say a Lebanon ceasefire must come first for them to start. US Vice President J.D. Vance is there saying he expects positive talks but warns Iran not to take.
Then top it with the other slice of bread. Put on the top section, then step 4, pop it in your microwave and get ready for a toasty made just right. The Clever Micro Toasty is the super compact solution and your shortcut to brave-worthy toasties. It's the clever way to get your crunch on fast. Real fast. What's the secret? It's all in the tech. The Clever Micro Toasty uses ingenious thermal way technology which harnesses and rechannels microwave power to specially designed fast-heated non-stick floor plates. It's like turning your microwave into an palpably been building through the last few days, as they've made their way back, because everyone knew this state of arrangement. Launch is always risky. That big, the world's most powerful rocket, the SLS, we saw blast off from Kennedy Space Center in Florida just over 9 days ago. You know, that was a risky moment. This one, even more so, because as I was trying to explain, the report there, the heat shield of the spacecraft is about the only thing that shows a kind of a really serious, worry from the previous test flight, the uncrewed test flight they performed. And also, during re-entry, there are so many things that have to go absolutely perfectly right, one after another, that it's just a very short time. And to just watch it come down, it was a spectacular experience, a fantastic moment. Going to have to go and see a cardiologist, I think, to get my very good control, and it's been crazy, but they're now in their face. And I think for that it's the win that they needed. This whole program they got cancelled. Donald Trump, when he came into office in 2025, had earmarked Artemis for the chop because it's a very big chunk of spending for the federal government. It's cost about close to $200 billion so far. And they got a reprieve. The Senate wouldn't allow it to happen because they wanted to see if they could get this moon program, returning astronauts to the moon, using private companies to do that as well, take the burden off the taxpayer, grow the US economy. If this mission hadn't gone successfully, I think it would have been a very short-lived plan to return to the moon. But with this success, it's a big boost to NASA's new administrator, a big boost to the idea of doing it again. And if things continue as they are, we're going to be seeing human crew launches to the moon every year as soon as 2028.
Good day. Have a good night.
That is
It's 5 in the morning.
era of exploration, and I think it would be a very exciting one to watch and follow.
It comes at a time, Vic, Tom, of collaboration in the space race.
Oh, hello,
The
Zach.
European Space Agency had a huge part to play.
I think that's one thing that I think has gone a little bit celebrated in a way, but I too pains to mention it a couple of times when we've been here. That European service model, you saw it being jettisoned off the back just there in space, has worked almost flawlessly. I mean, again, the test flight of that, there's a few issues from valves, things they want to address before it flies again. But it kept the crew breathing, it provided all their drinking water, the propulsion, all the engines and rockets.
All the worst of money.
Everything took the moon round the back was provided by that. The solar panels that provided them with their power. Also, all those powers we had of the capsule and other platforms. Imagine golden, crispy, melty deliciousness straight from your microwave in as little as 3 minutes. Terrific toasties with big taste, big crunch, and no hassle, straight from your microwave. You heard what?
Okay, you visit us online. Choosing simplicity is about more than price. It's family and friends for you to arrange a separate celebration of your life in whatever way they feel is right for you. You can trust Simplicity because they're backed by the UK's largest integrated funeral provider. And Simplicity have 45 crematoriums nationwide, so it's likely they're one near you. Plus, they have high scores on review sites with comments such as easy to apply, clear and quick, just helpful and patient, and many more. More reasons why choosing Simplicity is the way to go.
I'm choosing Simplicity Cremations for myself after discussion with my family, as I don't like funerals and didn't want to put my family through the distress and cost of a traditional funeral. It's the modern way to go.
Arranging a plan with Simplicity Cremation has been so easy and uncomplicated. There's a form to fill, a couple of decisions to make, and that's it. Happy days. I'm saving money, and my family are happy too.
In a world of what? Spacecraft work. They are the only machines America has yet at its disposal right now to do that. To do Artemis 3 and 4 will rely on these rockets and that Orion spacecraft and that European service module. So if they haven't pulled this off, and because it's gone so well, I think it's a huge boost to NASA's confidence and to their political paymasters as well. I think that really sets us on a very good trajectory for those two missions. Beyond that, We are, in fact, in terms of landing, in 2028, they are going to have other parties ready. They need someone to build a lander for them. SpaceX, another company, Jeff Bezos, who Amazon founder, who has the company Blue Origin, they're testing their landers. Blue Origin this year on the moon, SpaceX probably the year after. Once they've got those, the landing on the moon looks good. The moon base, they're already signing contracts to do that. In fact, they signed one with an Italian company to help build the habitation for those that moon base already. So it's moving ahead. All of that said, it's a very ambitious timeline, and we're talking about putting humans on the moon in just over 2 years with landers that haven't been quite built and tested yet. It's going to be a very ambitious and tightly run thing. But I think the confidence boost, the kind of the exquisite precision we saw today, landing that capsule less than a mile from where they wanted it to be after the distance it had travelled. And
But it's far from that, isn't it? I think that your sense of how extraordinary the event has been.
It's astonishing, as you say, the first test on the intercept ending. We have to remember that flight. This was a rocket that had only launched twice before, a spacecraft carrying out its first mission with people on board, flying a trajectory that hasn't been, we've seen nothing like it since the 1970s. And so for everything to have gone as well as it seems to have done is remarkable. We were reduced, I think, in the first couple of days to talk about toilet problems, which is important. If that's the thing that you're worried about on your spacecraft, and you're having a very good spaceflight. I was thinking back this morning to a mission I covered a few years ago where I ran into the chief engineer and said, "How did it go?" And he said, "Everything is consistent with being perfect." And I think that's NASA's top line this morning, is that this went about as well as we could possibly have expected it to.
And then the danger and the jeopardy around re-entry, what were those moments that could have potentially gone spectacularly wrong?
Well, they were hitting the top of the Earth's atmosphere, as people will remember, at 25 miles per hour. They have to hit exactly the right angle twice to fly the trajectory that they're expected to. And then the spacecraft heats up to a rough approximation of the surface of the sun in terms of temperature. And so to be inside was essentially a fireball coming down through the atmosphere. I think would terrify most of us. I suspect the astronauts were fine. But it's that loss of control, I think, that we saw last night. This is the moment in the mission that's the highest risk. And it's actually one where there's very little anyone on the ground or anyone in the spacecraft can do. It's about making sure the trajectory is right. And then it's trusting in the design and the capabilities of the spacecraft that's been built. They have had problems with the heat shield, which didn't perform as expected. It'll be really interesting when they get this spacecraft back to see whether the changes they made actually to the way they came into the atmosphere solve that problem. They're already working on a new design of that heat shield to be used on the next mission. So I think that if this goes on to be a sequence of missions to take us back to the moon, this will be a very, very important moment that this test was ever done.
Yeah, really important point that you made about Artemis 1, because the heat shield in that led to a big debate, didn't it, in the space world about whether astronauts should indeed have done Artemis 2. Where did you stand on that debate?
Oh, I leave it to the experts, but I think where I was with my head was I talked to a friend who said that he was very confident that NASA had done everything that they needed to do, but not as confident as he'd like to be. You'd obviously always like to have tested every aspect of the system before you do a risky mission like this, but there's no time, and if you do that, you never take the risk and you never fly the mission. So there were critics, people who know what they're talking about, who were saying just 2 weeks ago that this mission shouldn't fly, and so NASA took the risk. Things seem to work well. We'll get the data from the flight in, and because this is a test mission, we'll have to understand how risky this actually was in retrospect. But it seems that people were vindicated in the testing they were able to do, the physics they were able to apply, the computer simulations they were able to run, seem to have held up, and everyone's happily safe and on it.
Absolutely, the safety of the mission, then stay in bed.
That's
Let's
all I
talk
can
about,
do.
yeah, exactly. Can we just talk about this?
You need to slow down, and the first which means you come into the atmosphere, you slow down because of the friction of the atmosphere, and then you get so that's supposed to slow you down. That's what Artemis 1 did. But they thought that the damage that they saw on that spacecraft was caused by that skip. It actually was due to gas getting trapped. in the heat shield came back in. And so rather they sort of did a little skip, a hot trajectory, if you like, this time. They didn't necessarily slow down a bit. It meant that that final landing was faster than had originally been the plan. But they were confident they'd run a lot of simulations, they'd run a lot of modeling, they'd taken the spacecraft or wind tunnel and heated it up and so on. And they were confident that it would be fine on that new trajectory, which was chosen to be. But that you can't actually test every element of that without flying the system. So that's why it was very important that things went well.
I wonder what comes next then. If this was, say, a rehearsal, what steps have to happen for that base on the moon to be a reality?
Well, there's two big things left. One is that, as Tom said in your report, we don't yet have the spacecraft that would land astronauts on the moon. So that's a big problem. The original plan was a very ambitious one involving 14 separate SpaceX launches of their Starship, which is a rocket that hasn't actually reached orbit yet, and that would meet the astronauts on the moon and take them down to the surface. So a lot of work to do there, whether it's back system or a rival one that's being developed. There's also a plan for an Artemis 3 mission, which is next year with any luck, where they would try things out in low Earth orbit, test those rovers, check that they can dock with the landing system and so on. So sort of if this was the dress rehearsal, you then have a technical rehearsal, and then the idea is landing on Artemis 4, which is supposedly 2028. Actually, what's going to happen next is a huge argument about the budget, because the President Trump has put forward a budget for next year that cuts funding for this rocket, the SLS system that took them to the moon, and argues that you can start again essentially and do this all very cheaply with commercial rockets, which I think is unlikely. And this program, this Artemis mission, it's evolved over 10 to 15 years, and almost every year there's been a row about whether it's worth funding and whether they want to put the money into it. But images like the ones we've seen in the last couple of days, especially the splashdown, especially when the astronauts start speaking to the media, I think NASA will use that to push their case to go on with Plan A and get people back to the moon in the next 3-4 years, I suspect.
Exciting period. Professor Chris Lintott, thank you so much for your time this morning. Okay, still to come after the break. We'll have the latest on US-Iran ceasefire talks taking place today in Islamabad.
It's free. Step inside the greatest view in London. Book now at londoneye.com.
A little clutter can take up a lot of space. Sell tech, fashion, appliances, and more. Things unlimited. And use it.
It's all right, making a mustache. What's the look with your sunshine freshness right out your door first.
One more here, in a fancy house. Do you like it?